Oh my god. This is... This is too much money. We're making too much money. Seattle. There are many reasons why so many people are jealous of this city. From its fantastic weather, cultural exports, and reliable people.
An explosive standoff begins when a man brandishes a samurai sword on a downtown sidewalk.
The people of Puget Sound, nay, all of Cascadia have something to be proud of when it comes to the city. And today, we'll be giving them one more by revitalizing Seattle's public transportation. And inadvertently skyrocketing the profits of the All-Cascadia Transport Authority beyond my expectations. Today we start working on an actual train line connecting Tacoma to Seattle, and it's going to start from here, Tacoma Dome Station, essentially where the Amtrak station is, but the difference is we won't be following the Amtrak right-of-way. Our plan instead is to basically follow the Seattle Subway Vision Plan. You'll see at the bottom of their map they have something called the Purple Line, and that's what connects Seattle to Tacoma. My plan instead for the empty space left behind by the Amtrak tracks is to use it for our high-speed rail. We'll be following that path connecting Tacoma to Puyallup to Seattle and beyond to Vancouver. However, that's a future plan and not what we're going to be tackling today. But I really like the idea of taking something out of the Osaka and Tokyo playbooks. If you know anything about Osaka, if we can go all the way over there. Oh my god, it's green! The world is green. Osaka, Japan. Check it out. Osaka has the Osaka Loop Line, and in Tokyo they also have something similar. It's called the Yamanote Line. And the Osaka Loop Line, Osaka Kanjo-sen, it's great. It really is great. The only issue is making loop lines in this game is a bit difficult. Like, it would be so cool if Seattle had something similar. I got a plan for a major stop in the International District. Considering that's just a huge thoroughfare with tons of people every day. Okay, so, from what I know, from what I have studied, I have seen this, that the train line sort of goes something like this. It's gonna loop around, going above the parking, I believe. Now this is the real station, and I'm not gonna follow it exactly because I just know that this right here is the light rail stop in real life, but we are gonna build a train station. So I'm going to build a station right here, 150 meters, 160 meters or so. The Tukwila International Boulevard Station. Do this. We're going to go around, boop, like that. Alright, so the next two on the Seattle Subway Vision Plan are in South Park and in Georgetown. So I'm going to build something right here. I then set to work building those stations and completing our connection from Tacoma to Seattle. Now, as the building happens in the background, I do want to talk a bit about Seattle's history. This land has been occupied for over 4,000 years by indigenous people, most recently by the Duwamish people. The Duwamish people had more than 17 villages along Elliott Bay and the Duwamish River by the time of Euro-American arrival. Duwamish is just the anglicization of their name in Lushootseed, that being, I'm going to butcher this, Duhtawabsh. Now, in the early 19th century, the Duhtawabsh were dealing regularly with the Hudson's Bay Company, after they had arrived in the area thanks to the scouting and exploration by George Vancouver. Now, if you're from the Tacoma area like me, you'll recognize the HBC as being vitally important to the region's history. It's instantly recognizable because for years, I'm not sure if it's still there now, I haven't seen it, but at Fort Nisqually, the Fort Nisqually replica, there was an HBC flag flying in the central little park area. Now, looking at the map, you'll realize Hudson's Bay is quite far away. How did the HBC get here? Well, They were in competition with another trade company called the Northwest Company, or the Nor'westers. These two British trade companies were in direct competition for several resources, fur, things like that, eventually coming to a head in an event called the Pemmican War. Now, due to pressure from their government and the lack of money to continue the war, the two companies merged together in 1821, and that led to the HBC extending more of its influence into the Northwest. The implications of this are something that people don't really think about. I'm a big fan of the ChinookJargon.com website, and, well, this is probably the event that leads to Métis, the French-Canadian indigenous language, having its influence reach into Chinook jargon. Anyway, to get off of this tangent and move to discussing Seattle more directly, in 1851, the area was actually being scouted and explored by two different parties, the Collins Party and the Denny Party. Both of them are famous. Now, the Collins Party settled essentially actually really close to where we had built that station, Georgetown. The Denny Party, meanwhile, landed at a place called Alki Point, now known as the birthplace of Seattle. There's a monument there. Now, a lesser-known fun fact about Alki Point is that originally, when the Denny Party reached it, they named it New York Alki. Sort of taking notes out of the Eric the Red playbook, the guy who named Greenland, hoping that lots of people would come there because it had a good name, right? So they were sort of following that tradition. The Duwamish, Skykomish, Snohomish, and many other tribes would be forced to sell their land to the US government with the Treaty of Point Elliott, which is one of the many treaties that Governor Stevens, Washington Territory's first governor, would have Native people sign. We'll get to Governor Stevens and his antics in a little bit, but that guy caused some problems. Okay, so I think that whole thing is done. We have built the line going all the way from King Street Station, all the way down to the Tacoma Dome. I have the line set up. It's all set up. The problem I'm having is, what is a reasonable price? I wonder what we could charge price per kilometer, and I'm thinking maybe a quarter? I don't know. We'll have to see. We'll just run it, and we'll see what we can get away with. So I'm very much a fan of this one. And I think it's what we're going to go with. It has a cafe on it. That's interesting. I love that. So let's go with this. Default color, let's use the line color. Pick decals. This is what I wanted. See? Let's go with this. That sound... Oh, wait. These both seem cool. Passenger service. Those guys. Oh my god, tons of people are on. Oh my god. So many passengers. Oh, we just made quite a bit more money there. These guys are... These people are ecstatic. Now, the thing is, all these people are getting off at King Street Station. And these trains are full, which makes me think we need to buy more trains. Oh my god. This is... this is too much money. We're making too much money. So, instantly, as you can see, this new train line is by like 5 times outperforming all of the tram lines that we built in Tacoma. Surely they're probably supporting each other, but yeah, man, that's pretty good. That's a lot of money, and it's only gonna go up. Oh my god. Oh my god, look at what this has done. I think the path is working, because we have 1,000 people, 1,241 people waiting here at this station. It's so many people, and I don't know if this is just where they were, and then where they're going. We'll have to check, but it seems like I know where the people who aren't getting serviced are, and it happens to be here. They're waiting here, and then yeah. So we're gonna need, I think, some new trams. Oh my god, oh. I didn't know we could do that. That's incredible. I think we're just going to stick with 2 articulations. And we're going to build 6 new trams on the line and see how that helps us out. I think what we're going to do is work on the Seattle subway system, or that Seattle loop line idea that I had. And I'll think about it a little bit. I'm just thinking something around here. Loop line, and building up King Station, which will then also be the high-speed rail station, I guess. I mean, this is just subway. There's nothing in the way here. We just have high-speed rail going down eventually. That would be great. And there's a massive corridor to do it. I then started working on the Seattle Loop Line, and the first station would be actually really incredible because it was in a pretty central location to Pike Place Market and Ye Olde Curiosity Shop. Ye Olde Curiosity Shop was founded in 1899 at the height of the Klondike Gold Rush, which was probably maybe the second best thing to ever happen to Seattle, by a guy named, and I am not shitting you, J.E. Daddy Standley. This guy also had another nickname besides Daddy, which is also sort of fitting, which was Curio Joe. And I don't know which one I like better. Okay, before I continue, content warning for the squeamish, okay? If you don't want to hear talk about dead people, please skip to the next timestamp. Okay, I'm gonna give you time to pause the video and just go. 3, 2, 1. Wapa. Now, ladies and gentlemen, anyone from the area knows that Ye Olde Curiosity Shop has a bunch of wild and wacky things in it. Not the least of which being the fake, the obviously like paper mache or dried fish thing is stitched together to a monkey mermaid. Everyone knows, just looking at the thing is fake. However, the Ye Olde Curiosity Shop is very famous for having something else, and you guys know what I'm talking about. It's those mummies. If you don't know, Ye Olde Curiosity Shop has 2 mummies on display, and so many people instinctively think that those mummies are fake. Obviously, the mermaid's fake. Why aren't the mummies fake? Folks, those mummies are the real deal. Now, I don't know if that thought will spoil the vibes whenever you go there and take pictures in front of them with your kids, but it is true. Those are 2 mummified, formerly alive human beings, Sylvester and Sylvia. And Sylvester is quite remarkable because he was preserved in arsenic, and he fared pretty well. Now, his body was found somewhere in the Arizona desert, and it was sold to our Daddy Stanley for the grand total of $25, if you can believe it, which was probably quite a bit more at the time, but, whatever. Now, Sylvester is accompanied by Sylvia, and Sylvia some people think was a Spanish immigrant to Central America who maybe died of tuberculosis, and her corpse was mummified in the heat of the desert, and then she found her way to where she always wanted to be in the first place, Seattle, Washington. Now, I can't stress enough how much I think this shop is a symbol for Seattle, or for Puget Sound in general. It has, throughout its history, been a go-to stop for any tourists, or anyone living in the area even. He also kept a guest book, and it's this guest book that actually really touches me. Any student of Pacific Northwest history knows the name Chief Joseph of the Nez Perce. Stanley's guest book was sort of like his own personal record, as well as sometimes a signature book. But when Chief Joseph visited, he wrote this: "The greatest Indian in America visited Ye Olde Curiosity Shop, 1902, with Red Thunder, his nephew." Now, the story of Chief Joseph and the Nez Perce War is just another one of the tragic tales of Indians being forced off their land. And it's one that we won't get to today, but we will be talking about another one soon. I think it's evidenced by his shop that Stanley felt a lot of admiration towards American Indians. And to have Chief Joseph, in his words, the greatest of the American Indians, walk through his doorstep, I think he felt a lot of things that would be hard to describe. I finished the building, and you'll see what I have here. It's going to cost basically 160 million. Okay, so I believe I have it all set up properly. Yep, let's see, 18 stops and 18 stops, which means everything should be set up. I haven't missed any stations at least. Now, I don't know if this will just blow up in my face completely, but, you know, you live and you learn. So, what do we put on this thing? I'm thinking we put just the same thing. These boys, the Miharu Bahulus. Alright, we're gonna be Bahuluing out here. So, let's use the line color, pick decal. I'm thinking this one, bro, why not? Let's go with this one. And we're gonna build 5 trains on the clockwise route. That seems really low considering we have 18 stations. Let's just do 6. Let's see what's happening. Okay, we're getting tons of passengers. That's fantastic. That's excellent. Well, it seems like, in any case, things are going pretty okay. Everyone is super happy. Look at these guys. They're so happy. Tons of people. This dude, he's just so happy being here. This guy, this one guy, like, he just walked in. He hasn't paid anything. He's just ecstatic. He's just happy to be there. Let's see what's going on here. These guys are pretty happy. Good. Excellent. Yeah, $3 flat fare is pretty good to get around all of Seattle. It doesn't matter how long it takes these people. They're just super happy to be on the train. Let's look at the other statistics. So we have Sunday. So this is still going. Let's look at a Saturday, because this was completed. We spent money on construction. That was that. New trains, 144 million. Ticketing, wow, fares, 226,000 for today. And if we can look at, where was it before? Where we were, like, looking at the trains. Oh boy. Oh, here we go. Assets. Trains. Let's look at lines. The Seattle... No. Day. I want the money total. Give me your money. Tell me about your money. The Seattle Loop Line is making money. Not as much as the Sound Unity line. It looks like it's making about half as much. But that's okay. So, fast forward, a couple real life days later, I'm building a tram line connecting to the birthplace of Seattle at Alki Point. And this is going to be great because this is going to connect us to the Denny party and where the Denny party originally landed. I believe they changed their position, like they resettled at some other part, but Alki Point is their original landing point. Anyway, I was so hyped to do this, but I could not do it earlier because right after I built the loop line, oh my god, I was so tired. I don't know if you guys could tell. Okay, so to be completely honest, I don't know very much at all about this part of Seattle. I don't know if I've ever been here in my life. So to that end, if anyone ever has any information on any neighborhood or anything that I sort of showcase and that I miss, yeah, please tell me, because I'd love to hear it. I love local history and things like that. Anyway, of course, like I said, this is the birthplace of Seattle, as it was called by the Denny party. and of course there's the monument. We also built a station right outside the lighthouse. Now, the other thing that I just found out, this is another sort of, bad fun fact, but you know how I said before, when the Denny party landed here, they originally called this area New York Alki, and the name changed to Seattle in 1852, of course naming the city after Chief Seattle, who is the most prominent of the Duwamish tribal leaders in the area. Now, Chief Seattle's name is pronounced really something more like Seal, and I'm gonna butcher that again for everyone. Now, that's okay, because when the people wrote down Seattle, it's unclear, but it seems like it was both a combination of mishearing, which I guess is reasonable considering the settlers of Seattle would have spoken Chinook jargon, but not Lachute. Basically, 1852, the name changes, right? It's only 1 year that Seattle is being called New York Alki. But in 1952, the Boy Scouts donated a miniature statue of the Statue of Liberty to Alki. And it's just like, can we ever get rid of this stain on our honor? Now, it's time for me to finally utilize my history degree, and this is the medium in which I'm doing it. Most people have never heard about this, especially when you consider that so many people in Seattle are not from Seattle. In fact, so many people in Seattle are just not from Washington State or anywhere in the Northwest. This oftentimes strained friendship with Chief Seattle, especially due to the actions of the US government or of Governor Stevens, will pay off. So, like I said in the first episode, Governor Stevens, first governor of Washington Territory, was not a very kind person when it came to dealing with indigenous people. He was a very aggressive treaty maker, and this is what strained the relationships with all of the native tribes in the area, and led to something called the Battle of Seattle. Now, the Battle of Seattle is often included in two different but really closely linked wars. The Yakima War and the Puget Sound War. Now, Stevens was a very ambitious person, and quite aggressive. He was a man on a mission, and the Bureau of Indian Affairs essentially was telling him, hey, you need to restrict your treaty making to people directly adjacent to white settlement. And he totally ignored that. That doesn't really change anything because the Bureau of Indian Affairs and Stevens had two conflicting and somewhat, but not completely always, contradictory goals. Contradictory Goal 1. The Bureau of Indian Affairs wants to assimilate as many Indians as possible into being white people, i.e., they want to make them farmers. However, the government and Stevens also want to take as much good farmland in the area and disperse it among white settlers. Okay, so the only way that I can describe the situation that follows from these policies is this. It's as a deadly game of deal or no deal, where one side has all of the guns, and the other side has no guarantee that those guys will actually follow through with their part of the bargain. In fact, they have a habit of not doing so anyway. One of these treaties that leads to the Battle of Seattle is called the Treaty of Medicine Creek. It's between Stevens, the US government, and a bunch of tribes, one of them being the Nisqually tribe. Okay, so the chief of the Nisqually tribe is this guy named Chief Leshai, and he has a problem with this whole, treaty and going to the reservations thing. First, the land that they're going to be going on isn't fit for growing food, and two, it's cut off from the river, which is their main source of food, right? The staple food of indigenous people in the area. A lot of it is salmon. So Leshai does the incredibly brave thing, where he says, not no, but hell no. And like we said, in the deadly game of deal or no deal, for Stevens, that's the wrong answer. It's all okay for Stevens, though, because he has a simple solution. If Leshai won't sign, according to some historians, well, we'll just forge a signature. Now, Leshai is half Yakima, and not long after this, the Yakima War breaks out. Basically caused because some miners go onto Yakima land and kill some women. And there's a native reprisal, and then the government goes really crazy against this native reprisal. Now there's widespread panic that an Indian uprising is going to start, and Leschi and the Nisqually and Puyallup peoples are at this time protesting against the territorial government, saying, hey, you guys aren't treating us fairly and we didn't agree to this reservation business. Stevens' response is I don't know if you would call it a masterstroke. He decides to declare martial law and try to arrest Leschi, and try to round up as many Nisqually people as possible and throw them into essentially concentration camp conditions on Fox Island. Now, Leschi is more or less actually still trying to sort of defuse the situation. However, a group of his tribe go out and, against his orders, basically raid this place, and they kill 2 Territorial Army volunteers. This is bad for Leschi, as we'll see in the future. So Leschi, for all we know, could have just been gathering friends to try to protest the government harder. But in either case, somehow there is an army of 200 to 500 Indians forming, and they attack Seattle. The Battle of Seattle goes rather poorly for the Indians. This is the Seattle of 1856, and the Seattle of 1856 is filled with people who speak Chinook jargon. Basically, the entire volunteer army in Seattle speaks Chinook jargon. Guess what the common language among the Indian tribal coalition is? Chinook jargon. So whenever anyone on this tribal coalition side is shouting orders in Chinook jargon, the volunteer army of Seattle knows what's going on, and also it doesn't help the Indians that they're being shelled by the USS Decatur. So, of course, the Battle of Seattle ends in defeat for the Indians, and eventually Leschi is arrested. Of course, he's not arrested at the battle because, well, he's probably not even there, but either way, he's pinned for it. The trial that follows is controversial to say the least. So Leschi is charged with the murder of the 2 volunteers that those guys from his tribe killed before the Battle of Seattle, and then he's also charged for the deaths of the Battle of Seattle. Problem. Well, problem for Leschi and not so much for Stevens. Is the killing of people, of enemies, during wartime murder? Even at the time, Leschi had quite a few supporters who said, you know, hey, even if he was there, and even if he was leading the Battle of Seattle, he was fighting a war, and you can't charge someone with murder if they're a soldier. So newspaper articles at the time came out essentially saying that same thing. There are even books today saying essentially that, and also questioning his level of involvement in the war against the government. So, his first trial did end in a hung jury, but he was eventually sentenced to death, and he was hung along Lake Steilacoom. Some of his last words do seem to confirm that he was, essentially in his own mind, at war, and he was forming a coalition or alliance to fight off the government. He said, quote, "I do not know anything about your laws. I have supposed that the killing of armed men in wartime was not murder. If it was, the soldiers who killed Indians are guilty of murder too. I went to war because I believed that the Indian had been wronged by the white men, and I did everything in my power to beat the Boston soldiers. But for lack of numbers, supplies, and ammunition, I have failed." In another gut-wrenching sort of quote, the hangman himself also said, "I felt then I was hanging an innocent man, and I believe it yet." The story is pretty long, and I'm sorry about that, but well, it's sort of important to our region. Now, if this story makes you really hate Stevens' guts, you'll be happy to know that he will eventually get his. However, it will happen in a way that will, I guess, make you feel sort of bad for the guy. First, Stevens essentially managed to expand the war beyond what it really needed to be, besides the war being really his own fault. In Stevens' mind, if any white settler had married an Indian, they were potential suspects in having aided the Indians during the Battle of Seattle and throughout the rest of the war. So he declared martial law, maybe again, and the government held him in contempt. Stevens then goes on to do the brilliant thing, which is just say, well, I pardon myself. Stevens's time as governor then soon comes to an end, but he will remain politically relevant, at least in a sense. He will be Washington Territory's representative. However, the Civil War breaks out in 1861, and Stevens is commissioned into the army again. He starts as a colonel, but he's soon promoted to brigadier general. Stevens is soon in charge of the 9th Army Corps. Fast forward to the Battle of Chantilly. So, it's September 1st, 1862, so at time of recording, we pretty much just missed the day of his death by 2 weeks. Stevens is with the 79th New York Regiment. They're called the Cameron Highlanders. His son is also with him, by the way. His son is named Hazard Stevens, which is pretty cool. Now, the Confederate Army is set up on the opposite side of this open field, which is pretty bad for Stevens, because if he wants to attack Chantilly, he's gotta move through an area with basically no cover. And throughout the battle, his standard bearers have been getting shot and killed, one after the other, and at some point, like 5 of these guys have gone down. Then, it's time for the next unlucky guy who decided to pick up the flag to be wounded, instead of killed, luckily for him, and Stevens runs over to this guy and wrenches the flag out of his hand. So the injured guy says, "General, don't do this, it's too dangerous." Stevens ignores him. In the chaos of this happening, the Confederates fire another volley, and this time Hazard is wounded. So Hazard is crying out for help, and Stevens says, I can't attend to you now. Corporal Thompson, see to my boy." Then Stevens turns around, he's got the flag in his hand, and he yells something along the lines of, "My Highlanders, follow your general." Then he basically leads a charge across this open field against the Confederates. So, it's unknown as to whether or not these guys shit themselves, but the Confederates run away. Stevens leads his force over the Confederate ramparts, which are now abandoned, and chases them. But, unfortunately, he is shot in the temple and dies instantly. So, if you're dead set on hating Stevens' guts, I do understand, but I think in his last moments he was, at least, an incredibly brave person. And at least in that sense, he was admirable. Of course, that doesn't make all the terrible shit that he did okay, or some of the other stuff that he said. Like, it seems like he was actually leading like a genocidal war against Indians, if you actually read some of the stuff he said. It doesn't make it okay. Now, that's not the last of the Stevenses we will see in Washington. Hazard Stevens will return to Washington Territory, and in 1870 he will make the first documented ascent all the way to the top of Mount Rainier with a guy named Van Trump, probably no relation. Now, if that wasn't enough, Hazard Stevens will do it again. In 1905, he will make his second ascent to the top of Mount Rainier with a mountaineering group called the Mazamas, who are still active today in Portland, I think. And this is in 1905 again, so doing the math, he must have been about 63 or 62. Pretty incredible stuff. So, after that long segment, you can see I have started building a north-south line connecting King Street Station. It's going to run through the center of Seattle, and basically probably be the one that goes further and further north towards Vancouver. I don't know if it'll be like this line, like the line under this name, but more or less, I think it would be pretty useful. So, I'm not sure of how the pathing works in this game entirely. I'm hoping that it will give passengers a reliable choice to get to Vancouver that's not high-speed rail. So realistic pathing might be a bit of an issue. What I mean by that is, for example, I live in Osaka. If I want to go to Kyoto, I wouldn't take the Shinkansen, I would take the regular train. I'm not sure what exactly passengers in this game would choose. Would they see high-speed rail as the faster and therefore just better option they would take all the time? I don't know. But that's okay. That's a problem for a future time. Oh no. Oh no. Oh no. Oh no. Oh god. In my hubris, I forgot about our loans. Well, this is a temporary measure. I didn't want to have to do this, but it appears as though we're going to have to temporarily raise the rate. I'm thinking Oh god, what do we do? 25 cents per square kilometer? This experience would lead me to go on a search, a wild hunt to find all of the reasons for why we're losing money. And that includes needing to pay also lots of money in compensation, like to all the people who never made it to the train, or who paid money but couldn't get on and couldn't transfer. So we had to pay that money back. That was one of the things that we were losing a lot of money on. In addition to the fact that we also have to pay these loans every month that are like $18 million. Well, how do we solve that? Well, the issue is, because in my hubris, I didn't think about a lot of things, okay? But I didn't think about all of the people who would be very angry because they couldn't get on the train. And so you see all these people want to get on the train and transfer. Well, they can't get on the train on the central line because there aren't enough trains on that line. So we have to save money to buy the trains, but we have to spend a month, one new train per month. It's a little, I'm so sorry. It was my fault. Look, if I was Jeff Bezos, I would just do the smart thing and take out another loan, but, yeah. Maybe what I need is something like this. Maybe there needs to be a tram line going here, then to First Hill, and moving up, because First Hill is actually a huge station. First Hill is more than King Street Station, right? So, I think First Hill needs some more supporting lines, otherwise, it clogs everything up. It's so expensive. And I think what I need to do first is focusing on getting more of these other trains on this central subway line before I consider doing that, because that I at least know will work. For all I know, getting another tram line going to Madison Park up here might clog things up even more. I'm not sure. Maybe it would be good, but it's a tough choice. For now, let's just save up some money and prepare for paying off the next bit of our loans. The other thing is, actually, I do think we need more trains on the Unity line, because if we look at not just King Street Station, but Terminal 30 and Certainteed, those guys are also running up some compensations. Let's see, compensated way too long. Terminal 30, that's also up there, right? Terminal 30 is second place here, not Harborview. So Terminal 30 and Certainteed, yeah. But the reason why is probably because of our addition on this line with this other tram line, right? Branching off of Terminal 30, we have all of these people. All of these people. And if we look here, sorry, wrong guy. We look here, all of these passengers on this tram are going to Terminal 30. So while we accumulated the money to pay off our loans and get enough money to also buy trains in the process, I went outside while the game was fast forwarding. I went for a walk, I did some chores, and I came back. And, as you can see, it worked. Yeah, the only issue was we didn't have enough trains. So I bought more trains, and now everything is working fine. We spent some money on getting new trains for the Central line and the Unity line, and when we spread it out like that, we basically went from having 5,000 people begging for compensation to essentially no one. I think sometimes a few hundred. I think we did pretty well this episode. I think another thing we could add is, like I was thinking, a couple more tram lines, streetcar lines, down through various neighborhoods of Seattle. And then, I mean, we left White Center out. White Center or Burien or all these other places. All these places need to be connected up. And all of these other places, like Renton, holy shit. Renton, being linked up to the main Unity line is going to push our infrastructure to its limits, and then we're going to have to expand this line again with more trains and potentially more platforms. If you guys have any, suggestions of what area to work on next, please let me know. I'd love to do it. And I'm very excited to one day get to building in one of my favorite places in Washington, which is Paulsbo.
Vikings!
Yeah, Paulsbo would be great. We wouldn't be making tons of money going to Paulsbo, but we would be getting Lutefisk, which some people have very strong opinions about. In all seriousness, Paulsbo is beautiful and has a great, fantastic bakery. Anyway, I love you all. Have a good one. And, let me know. Peace.